Hello everyone, this is Yours Trivia, and today I'm going to be sharing the stories from the original Journey to the West novel that relates to the first chapter of the game Black Myth Wukong, titled Black Cloud Red Fire. And as the game takes place after the events of the Journey to the West, this retelling of the novel can be seen as a prequel to the events in the game, and hopefully provide vital background information to players less familiar with the source material. It is also interesting to revisit the original story here and see how certain elements have been changed and adapted in the game to better fit its plot. For those who have not played Black Myth Wukong, in the game, we play as the Destined One, a monkey from Mount Huaguo that is on a journey to revive the fallen Wukong by collecting the 6 relics, each containing one of Wukong's 6 senses. With the first sense of sight scattered to the Black Wind Mountain, our journey in the game begins in a familiar location, as the Black Wind Mountain was also featured in the original novel, spanning from chapter 16 to the start of chapter 18. And that is where our story begins. In the novel, the Tang monk, or Tang Seng, and his first disciple, Wukong, was early on in their journey west as they approached a monastery, or temple, in honor of Guanyin Pusa, a Buddhist deity that represents compassion and mercy, as the term Guanyin literally means to observe the sounds of the world, representing the deity's ability to listen in on all the suffering in the mortal realm. And just as a side note, for those who are unfamiliar with Buddhist terminology, the term Pusa, or Bodhisattva in Sanskrit, is a practitioner of Buddhism who is on their path towards true enlightenment, or Buddhahood. And in the framing of the novel, they represent powerful deities with great power. Now, needing a place to rest for the night, Tang Seng and Wukong approached the monks of the monastery, seeking shelter. And as they were also monks themselves, the monastery happily opened its door to them. Upon entering the monastery, Tang Seng wanted to first pay his respect to the main deity of the monastery in Guanyin, as it was also Guanyin who had originally influenced the Tang Emperor to send Tang Seng on this journey westward. During Tang Seng's prayer to the Guanyin statue, it was customary to have drums and bells playing in the background to provide a solemn beat for the prayer chants. So one of the monks from the monastery played the drums while Wukong manned the bells. When Tang Seng's prayer ended, the drums ceased, but the ever-playful Wukong insisted that he was going to ring the bell once for each day he had been a Buddhist monk, and thus he continued to ring the bell until the entire monastery was alerted to the presence of their new unruly guests. And this was when Tang Seng and Wukong first met Jin Chi, who was the elderly abbot of the monastery. In the novel, Jin Chi's appearance was described as a fragile old man who needed the help of 2 younger disciples to even walk out to meet Tang Seng and Wukong. His face was filled with wrinkles, his eyes no longer able to see clearly, his teeth missing, and his back slouched. But despite all this, he was dressed impeccably, with a cap topped by a lustrous cat-eye gem. His clothing was made of fine silk, finished with golden seams and embroidered with peacock feathers. His shoes were decorated with the symbols of the 8 auspicious signs of Buddhism, and his staff was decorated with gems that glistened like the heavenly stars. Now, this flashy display of wealth extended far beyond the abbot's attires, as when tea was served, the tea tray was made of high-quality jade. The tea cups were blue porcelain, with embedded gold laces, and the teapot itself was made of crumpled nickel that shined like silver. Seeing these, Tang Seng politely praised the abbot for his fine taste, only to be asked by the abbot if he had brought any treasures from the Tang Empire with him. While Tang Seng would humbly claim that the Tang Empire does not have treasures that could match the splendid possessions of the abbot, Wukong was eager to humble the abbot, as he pointed out that his master's kasaya, or a Buddhist cloak, was an unmatched treasure. Hearing Wukong's statement, the monks of the Guanyin monastery jeered back, as they explained that almost every monk in the monastery had a sizable collection of cloaks, numbering between 20 to 30, depending on how many years they've been a monk. And their abbot, who had been a monk for almost 260 years now, as he was 270 years old, had a collection of nearly 800 cloaks that needed more than 12 chests just to store. And thus they did not believe that Tang Seng's cloak could best their abbot's entire collection. Due to Wukong's insistence, the monks quickly brought out the 12 chests containing the nearly 800 cloaks, as they will be put on display stretched across multiple clotheslines in the monastery's courtyard. While impressive sight, when Wukong brought out Tang Seng's cloak, which was a gift from the deity Guanyin and an instrument crafted by the gods to protect Tang Seng on this westward journey, all the abbot's cloak lost their shine. The abbot himself was also immediately overcome with jealousy and a strong desire to add this cloak to his already needlessly large and wasteful collection. So, using the excuse that his eyesight was poor, the abbot asked to borrow the cloak overnight so that he can observe it closely in his quarters. Even though Tang Seng was hesitant about lending the cloak, Wukong insisted that it would be fine and that he would take responsibility for the cloak should anything happen to it. And thus the abbot got his hands on the cloak for the night, while Tang Seng and Wukong were shown to a room on the side to rest. Upon examining this cloak up close, the abbot's desire for the cloak only grew, as he became overwhelmed with emotions, weeping as the thought of returning the cloak the next morning was simply too much to bear. The sound of the abbot's crying alerted two of his favorite disciples in Guangzhi and Guangmou, who rushed to their abbot's side to see what was wrong. Initially, they tried to comfort their abbot, but after seeing that their abbot was set on having this cloak, Guangzhi suggested murdering these two traveling guests in the middle of the night. No one would know, as they were far away from the Tang Empire, and that the cloak would become theirs, forever a treasure of their monastery, to be enjoyed by generations to come. Hearing Guangzhi's plan, Guangmou, a junior disciple to the more senior Guangzhi, spoke up with the improved version of the plan, as he argued that the monkey monk, Wukong, looked very difficult to kill. So instead of trying to stab them to death in the middle of the night, they could use fire and make it look like an accident. Settling on this plan, the over 200 monks of the monastery immediately started to move firewood and dry kindling to surround the room that the two guests were resting in, as they planned to start a giant fire that would be inescapable. Yet the commotion woke the ever-alert Wukong, who would transform himself into a bee to secretly observe these monks. Initially, Wukong wanted to just kill these cold-blooded monks with his staff, but fearing that his clueless master would end up blaming him for this senseless murder of all the monks in the monastery, Wukong came up with a better plan. Jumping into the heavens, Wukong arrived at the South Celestial Gate to meet with its guardian, the Southern Heavenly King, Guangmu, as Wukong wanted to borrow his magical item, 避火罩, or the fire protection cover. Questioning why Wukong needed this item, as Wukong himself was fireproof, Guangmu will learn that Wukong intended to use it to cover his master Tang Seng in order to protect him from an imminent fire. Guangmu then continued to ask Wukong why doesn't he just use water to put out the fire, as Wukong also has the ability to redirect water. And that is when Wukong revealed his devious intention to instead summon the winds to blow the flame back towards the rest of the monastery as punishment against these murderous and thieving monks. Not wanting to debate with Wukong on the morality of his plan, Guangmu handed over the fire protection cloak and sent the troublesome monkey back on his way. Once back at the monastery, Wukong casted the cover over his still sound asleep master, their white dragon horse, and their luggage before hopping his way to the rooftop of the abbot's chamber in the back of the monastery, as he wanted to make sure that the cloak would end up unharmed while he summoned the winds to spread the flame all across the monastery. With Wukong stoking the fire, the flame would reach incredible heights as the light emitted from these fires could be seen throughout the mountains that surrounded the monastery. And it would be these light that would wake the black bear monster of the Black Wind Cave, who was actually a friend of the elderly abbot. Believing the fire to be accidental, the black bear monster used his power to turn into a gust of black wind as he rushed to the monastery with the intention to help the monks put out the fire. Once there, however, the black bear monster could spot Wukong atop of the abbot's chamber and see that winds was being summoned to stoke the flame. Eager to check on the safety of his friend, the black bear monster snuck into the abbot's room, only to get immediately captivated by Tang Seng's cloak. So instead of trying to save the monastery, the black bear monster, who was still in his black wind form, simply swiped the cloak and left the monastery undetected to return back to his cave. By the next morning, when the fire had consumed almost all the monastery, Wukong first made a quick visit to the heavens to return the fire protection cover, before returning to his master's side as Tang Seng was still clueless about the events of last night. After Wukong explained what had happened, Tang Seng blamed Wukong for the calamity and worried that the flame might have damaged the cloak as they hurried to meet the abbot. But when they emerged from their room unharmed, the monks of the monastery became spooked, as they were certain that no mortal could have survived those flames from last night. Now worried that these two guests were actually gods in disguise, the monks quickly rushed to inform their abbot, who was already in a state of panic after the cloak had vanished magically in a gust of wind amidst the fire. With Tang Seng and Wukong fast approaching, seeking a return of the cloak that he no longer possessed, the shamed abbot bashed his head into the wall, committing suicide to escape the responsibilities of the plot that had reduced his life work to nothing but ashes overnight. But the abbot's death does not solve the problem of the vanished cloak, as Wukong, who had vouched for the safety of the cloak prior to lending it to the abbot, searched all 230 monks that remained behind, only to learn that there was a black bear monster that resided in the Black Wind Mountain, just 20 li, or 10 kilometers southeast of the monastery. Guessing that the fire must have alerted the monster, resulting in the theft of the cloak, Wukong commanded the remaining monks to take good care of his master Tang Seng, while he ventured into the Black Wind Mountains to search for the missing cloak. Luck would have it, once Wukong arrived in these mountains, he immediately spotted a meeting between the black bear monster and two of his monster friends, who took the form of a Taoist and a scholar dressed in white. After eavesdropping on their conversation, Wukong learned that the black bear monster had indeed stolen the cloak and was planning to feature the cloak in a feast to celebrate his birthday tomorrow. Jumping out with his staff ready to strike, Wukong crashed the party, as both the black bear monster and the monster in Taoist form slipped away in panic, while the scholar in white ended up on the receiving end of Wukong's staff. And in one strike, the scholar in white died, revealing his true form as a white snake monster. Cutting the snake into many pieces out of rage, Wukong continued into the mountains to search for the black bear's den. Once outside the Black Wind Cave, Wukong knocked on the giant stone doors, demanding for the black bear monster to return his master's cloak. When the black bear monster emerged from his den, ready for battle, he had on a blackened iron helmet, a full set of blackened iron armor, black leather boot, and a spear with a black tassel. And because he was black from head to toe, Wukong mocked him for looking like a poor coal miner. The black bear monster responded by asking about Wukong's origins, only for Wukong to explain again that he was only here for the return of his master's cloak. Playing dumb, the black bear monster claimed that he knew nothing about any cloak and that Wukong would have better luck searching for it at whatever temple he was from. Losing his patience, Wukong revealed that he already heard all about the plan for the birthday feast featuring his master's cloak, and repeated his demands for the last time, while also threatening the black bear monster that if the cloak was not returned, then he will level this entire mountain. Unafraid, the black bear monster mocked Wukong for being the one who actually spread the fire that burned down the monastery last night, while claiming that Wukong's arson and his theft were no different in principle. More importantly, he was not going to cower to the threats from a nobody. Sensing that he was not getting his proper respect, Wukong then went on to share his glorious past of challenging the Celestial Court, only for the black bear monster to mock him again for his embarrassing past as a mere stable master for the heavenly horses. As this embarrassment was taboo for Wukong, the negotiation turned into a full-fledged battle as Wukong fought the black bear monster. After a few dozen exchanges, seeing that the sun had reached its noon position, the black bear monster called for a pause as he asked if they could take a break so he can go back to his cave to have his lunch. Laughing at this ridiculous demand, Wukong brought up how he had once not eaten for 500 years when he was trapped under the Five-Finger Mountain, as the black bear monster's request was rejected by Wukong. Still hoping to stop the fight, the black bear monster ended up feigning a thrust of his spear to create some distance between him and Wukong before using the opening to slip back into his cave. With the giant stone gates of the cave shut, Wukong decided to return back to check in on his master back at the Guanyin monastery. After reporting back to Tangseng and having a little lunch himself, Wukong returned back to the Black Wind Mountains only to bump into a small monster carrying a small decorative wooden box. Knowing about the upcoming birthday feast, Wukong guessed the box must be carrying invitations, so he smashed the small monster into a patty with one swing of his staff, as he would snatch the box to find an invitation for the elder Abbott Jinchi. With concrete evidence that Jinchi and the black bear monster were friends, Wukong decided that since the black bear monster still did not know about Jinchi's suicide that morning, he could exploit this situation. Using his transformation ability, Wukong quickly turned himself into the appearance of Jinchi, as he hoped to trick the black bear monster into handing over the stolen cloak. Soon appearing in front of the stone gate of the Black Wind Cave, Wukong, who now looked like Jinchi, knocked and asked for entry. The monster in charge of the entrance quickly reported back to the black bear monster inside, who immediately became suspicious as the invitation was just sent out. By his estimate, there shouldn't have been enough time for his messenger to even reach the Guanyin monastery, much less for Elder Abbott to show up at his door. The only explanation that made sense to the black bear monster was that the abbot must have been already on his way to the cave on behalf of Wukong and Tangseng, seeking the return of the stolen cloak when he bumped into the messenger with the invitation. Not wanting to return the cloak to his old friend, the black bear monster quickly ordered his subordinates to hide the cloak away as he went to the entrance to greet the abbot. Seeing that he was being let in, Wukong followed the unsuspecting black bear monster into the lair. And while this was a monster lair, Wukong would note that the inside of the cave was tastefully decorated with plenty of trees and flowers, as well as a thoughtful couplet that occupied both sides of the door frame inside the cave. On the left side was the phrase, 静隐深山无俗忧, meaning to live deep inside the mountains, avoiding the concerns and troubles of the mortal world. And on the right side, finishing the couplet, is the phrase, 幽居仙洞乐天真, meaning to live in this sagely cave is a true heavenly delight. Sensing that the black bear monster had actually picked up plenty of enlightened Buddhist views from his years of friendship with Jinchi, Wukong proceeded carefully as they took a seat in the main hall, and tea was served. Kicking off the conversation, the black bear monster asked Jinchi why he was visiting today, when the invitation was for his birthday feast the next day. Wukong responded by claiming that he was already on his way for a visit when he bumped into the messenger, which is why his visit today was not about the birthday feast, but about the return of the lost cloak of Tang Seng. Denying that he had stolen the cloak, the black bear monster laughed and deflected the question by saying that Tang Seng is a guest of the monastery. If you want his cloak, why are you asking me? Wukong went on to explain how he, or Jin Chi, had already borrowed the cloak last night for viewing, only to have it stolen during a fire that had burned down the monastery. And after Tang Seng's disciple, Wukong, investigated this morning, they all know that it's here in the Black Wind Cave. Now, just as the black bear monster was going to deflect the question once again, a scout ran into the main hall to report that the body of the messenger sent out earlier had been discovered, and that they suspect that this Jin Chi is actually Wukong in disguise. Seeing that the gig is up, Wukong transformed back and pulled out his staff just in time to block a spear thrust from the black bear monster. The two then resumed their fight from earlier in the day, as they would battle from the inside of the cave out to the peak of the Black Wind Mountain, before finally ascending into the skies as both would ride clouds to continue their duel. The fighting would continue without either side gaining the upper hand until dusk, when the black bear monster once again asked for a break. This time he pointed out to the darkened skies and pleaded for a good night's sleep before resuming their fight. And much like with the black bear monster's plea for a lunch break earlier in that day, Wukong refused this time as well, only for the black bear monster to flee from the fighting, as he would turn himself into a gust of wind and blew himself right back into the Black Wind Cave. Once inside, the black bear monster shut the impenetrable stone gates and called it a night, while Wukong was once again left empty-handed outside. Returning back to his master Tang Seng, Wukong was briefly reprimanded for not returning with the stolen cloak, but after Wukong showed Tang Seng the invitation indicating Jin Chi's relationship with the black bear monster, Tang Seng summoned the monks of the monastery and questioned them if Jin Chi was a monster or a human. The monks quickly explained that their elderly abbot is indeed just a human, but the black bear monster was capable of taking human forms and was frequently a guest of the abbot here in the monastery, where they would discuss matters of enlightenment and Buddhism, and in return for the abbot's teachings, the black bear monster would teach the abbot breathing techniques and other cultivation methods to extend his mortality. Confused at how a black bear could cultivate and gain human form, Tang Seng asked Wukong, who replied that this was quite common, as anything with 9 holes, referring to the 2 eye holes, 2 nostrils, 2 ear holes, the mouth, the butthole, and the hole for peeing, can cultivate, gather natural energies, and eventually reach immortality. Wukong even pointed to himself as an example of this, as he was originally a stone monkey, before cultivating to become the sage who challenged the heavens. Hearing this explanation, Tang Seng then asked Wukong about how strong this black bear monster was, and Wukong replied that he is actually on par with me. Worried that the parity in their powers would make it difficult to recover the stolen cloak, Tang Seng voiced his concerns, only for Wukong to comfort his master that he already has a plan in mind, as the two of them would turn in for the night. The next morning, at the crack of first light, Tang Seng, who tossed and turned, unable to sleep in the night, woke Wukong and rushed him on his way to recover the cloak. Wukong sprung up and instructed the monks to take care of his master, as he planned to leave the area to seek help elsewhere. Learning Wukong's plans, Tang Seng asked who Wukong was going to seek help from, and Wukong answered that since this is the Guanyin monastery, where Guanyin receives the prayers and incense of his followers from this area, then he should also be the one responsible for the monster that plagued these mountains. So Wukong was planning to travel to Nanhai, or the South Sea, where Guanyin resides, and seek his aid. Worried that it would take Wukong ages to travel to the South Sea and back, Tang Seng then asked how long Wukong would be gone. Given that Wukong has the Nimbus Cloud Jump that allows him to travel long distances in a short amount of time, Wukong confidently told his master that it would take him just half a day, and this should all be settled by noon. And sure enough, with one hop of his Nimbus Cloud Jump, Wukong arrives in Nanhai, where he is first greeted by devatas, or demigod guardians, who question why he was there, as the last time they heard, he was tasked with accompanying Tang Song on his journey westward. Wukong quickly explained that he was here to see Guanyin, as there had been an incident on the journey that now required his help. After reporting back to Guanyin, the devatas allowed Wukong in. After a slight bow to show his respect to Guanyin, who sat atop of the lotus platform, Wukong was asked why he was here. Quick to place the blame on Guanyin's oversight in hopes of guilting him to help, Wukong explained what had happened in the 2 previous days, purposely highlighting the fact that this was all happening near a monastery dedicated to his honor. Not taking the bait, Guanyin pointed out that none of this would have happened if Wukong was never tempted to compete with the abbot and show off his master's cloak, and that the theft by the black bear monster was a direct result of his summoning of the wind during the fire, as there could have been other more peaceful responses to the arson plot of the monks in the monastery. Hearing this, it became clear to Wukong that Guanyin had the powers to know the past and the future, and thus already knew this event would happen. So getting to the point, he asked for Guanyin's help, as without his help, Wukong did not have a great way to beat the black bear monster and reclaim his master's stolen cloak. Guanyin replied that indeed the black bear monster is of similar strength as Wukong, and that for Tang Seng's sake, he would accompany Wukong to tame this bear. Delighted to hear this, Wukong thanked Guanyin as the 2 of them would ride on clouds and make their way back to the Black Wind Mountains. As this was the day of the black bear monster's birthday feast, once Guanyin and Wukong descended down from the clouds, they would immediately bump into the Taoist-looking monster who escaped from Wukong the day before. The Taoist, on his way to his friend's feast, was carrying a glass tray with 2 heavenly-looking dun, or a concentrated pill, created through Taoist alchemy. Without any notice, Wukong slammed his staff right on top of the Taoist's forehead. With brain matters and blood splattering about, the Taoist died before even knowing what had happened to him. Displeased by Wukong's display of senseless violence, Guanyin questioned Wukong why he killed the seemingly innocent Taoist who did not steal his master's cloak or even know them. Wukong quickly explained that this Taoist was a friend to the black bear monster and that he had seen them together the day before. Taking a close look, Wukong realized that the Taoist's true form was a wolf monster, and that below the glass tray is a maker's stamp that says, "Made by Ling Xuzi." Guessing that Ling Xuzi is the Taoist name of the wolf monster, Wukong came up with a devious plan on the spot, as he asked Guanyin if he could play along and help make the plan a reality. Claiming that this plan would allow them to tame the bear without even a fight, Wukong explained that all they would have to do is first have Guanyin transform into the appearance of this Ling Xuzi. Next, Wukong would eat one of the dun, or alchemist pills, before transforming himself into the pill, but slightly bigger. Then all Guanyin, who is taking the form of the wolf monster, have to do is attend the birthday feast as before, offer the pills as a birthday present, have the black bear monster swallow the bigger pill that is actually Wukong in disguise, and at that point, with Wukong inside the black bear monster's stomach, they can demand for the stolen cloak back. And should the black bear monster refuse, Wukong will just have to make a new cloak for his master using the intestines of the black bear monster instead. Complying with Wukong's plan, Guanyin easily transformed into the appearance of the Taoist that they had just killed, while Wukong observed in amusement. Eager to tease Guanyin, Wukong wondered out loud what he should call Guanyin in this new form, as he debated between 妖精菩萨 or 菩萨妖精, or basically the combined words of monster and bodhisattva, or a Buddhist deity, and Guanyin calmly lectured back at Wukong, explaining that the difference between a monster and a Buddhist deity is sometimes just one thought, as the boundary between good and evil can change at any moment. More importantly, at a fundamental level, there are no monsters or deities, as good or evil can take any form. Enlightened by Guanyin's response, Wukong then carried out his part of the ploy, as he would go on to eat one of the pills and then transform himself to replace it, only just a little bigger to help tell the real one and the fake one apart, and to add a slight incentive to tempt the black bear monster into eating him first. The two of them then proceeded to the Black Wind Cave, where Guanyin became impressed by the layout of the black bear monster's lair, as these slight signs of enlightenment, as noted by Wukong's first visit here, planted the seed of mercy within Guanyin's heart. Once inside, they were quickly greeted by the black bear monster himself, who invited them into the main hall. While the black bear monster wanted to discuss the matter with Wukong, Guanyin quickly guided the conversation toward the birthday gifts of the two pills, as he explained how these newly crafted alchemist pills can grant more than 1,000 years to their lives, and that he had brought them to share with the birthday bear. Delighted to hear this, the black bear monster grabbed the larger pill, as Wukong had predicted, and just before he was going to gulp it down, the pill magically rolled into his throat. Seeing that Wukong had successfully entered the bear, Guanyin returned to his true form, while the black bear monster also transformed back into his true form of a black bear on 4 legs, as the presence of Wukong inside him was starting to cause immense pain for him. Seeing the black bear monster rolling around in pain, Guanyin demanded for the return of the cloak. But before the black bear monster could respond, Guanyin observed that Wukong exited from the black bear monster's nostril, as he was unable to stay inside the black bear monster for long. Exploiting the black bear monster's moment of weakness, Guanyin tossed a golden circlet onto the bear's head, who was still collecting himself from having Wukong inside him. Once the black bear monster regained his composure, he angrily thrusted his spear at Guanyin, only for Guanyin to escape back to the clouds while chanting the mantra that controlled the tightness of the golden circlet that was now stuck on the black bear monster's head. And much like the golden circlet that Wukong wore to help Tang Seng control Wukong, which was another handiwork of Guanyin, the black bear monster threw away his spear in pain and fell down to his knees, as he would roll around with the golden circlet squeezing his head in response to Guanyin's chant. Wukong roared in laughter at this sight of the poor bear, as finally he was not the only one on the receiving end of the golden circlet. While Wukong laughed and the bear rolled around in pain, Guanyin asked the bear if he was willing to forsaken his mortal desires and officially become a student of Buddhism as his own disciple. Eager to receive mercy from the pain in his head, the black bear monster agreed. Impatient and unhappy about this arrangement, Wukong raised his staff seeking to end the black bear monster's life, only for Guanyin to stop him, as Guanyin go on to explain that he needed someone capable to help him guard the land behind Mount Luojia, or Mount Patalaka in Sanskrit, which translate to the Burian's Mountain, where Guanyin dwelled in the South Seas. Jeering at Guanyin's mercy, Wukong jokingly stated that if he had the power of the golden circlet chant, then he would use it 1,000 times, and at that point, no amount of monsters would ever be a problem again. Ignoring Wukong's jab of how he had the power to tame all the monster in the mortal realm, but chose not to do it, Guanyin approached his new disciple in the black bear, who was still recovering from the headache from the earlier chant. Placing his hand atop of the black bear's head to leave the mark of Buddhism, Guanyin officially made the black bear his disciple, as he instructed the black bear to pick up his spear and return with him to the South Sea. Wukong politely offered to accompany Guanyin back to properly thank Guanyin for his aid, but Guanyin refused as he instead asked Wukong to just go back to Tangseng and continue his task of protecting him on their journey westward. Wukong bowed, took back the stolen cloak from the now tamed black bear, and watched Guanyin and the black bear leave before torching the entire Black Wind Cave to destroy it for good. The numerous other monsters that had served the black bear monster were now long gone, as the sight of Guanyin had scared them all to hide deep into the mountains. So Wukong didn't bother to chase them down, as he would return back to the burnt ruins of the Guanyin monastery to reunite with his master. By the time Wukong got back, it was already dusk, so Tangseng was quite concerned, as Wukong had originally promised to return by noon. But when Wukong hopped out of the cloud with the cloak in hand, Tangseng was quite pleased, and after learning what had happened, he asked the monks in the monastery to help set up a prayer altar, as Tangseng wanted to give his proper thanks to Guanyin, and these remaining monks happily complied, as they had been all worried about their own lives, thinking that Wukong might kill them all out of rage should he fail to recover the stolen cloak from the black bear monster. And after the prayer, the monks used their remaining wealth from the items rescued from the fire to give Tangseng one last proper feast before Tangseng and Wukong left the Guanyin monastery for good the next morning. And with that, the story of the Black Wind Mountain from the journey to the west also comes to an end, as hopefully you found this story helpful in understanding the events of the first chapter from the game Black Myth Wukong. Now, there are obviously many adaptations done by the developers to better fit the plot of the game, such as the new backstories of the two junior monks in Guangzhi and Guangmou, as well as the extension of the friendship between the black bear monster and Jinchi. And I hope to cover all these points in game plot for Chapter 1 in a future deep dive lore video. So if you're interested in more Black Myth Wukong content, please consider subscribing to the channel. And it would also mean the world to me for you to show your support by hitting that like button or leaving a comment below. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye!